Hi everyone, and welcome to week 2. You can navigate, to the objectives and overview to see kind of what we're looking at this week. We're going to learn a little bit more about motion graphics, use base properties, animatable properties to create an animation, and render your animation. When I say animation, obviously we're dealing in motion graphics, but kind of hand in hand. And then you'll go through the following steps. Week 2 video, this is the video you're watching, so you're set. What is motion graphics? We talked about it last class, but I think this site is a really good one to go through. This is kind of a fun example going over what motion graphics is in video form. So they use motion graphics to tell you what motion graphics is. I want you to pay attention to the animatable properties that we talked about, the position, scale, rotation, opacity, and see, focus on a specific part and see what they're actually animating. And then this kind of goes over the different types of motion graphics. So just like when you're an art major, the job possibilities are endless almost. Motion graphics has a lot of endless possibilities as well. Here's a video that goes over the origin of motion graphics. Now, one of the first couple examples in history would be the intro to movies. Saul Bass decided that we should have kind of a design to bring us into movies. Now that's a very common, every show has a theme and an introduction, every movie, but it was kind of the beginning of motion graphics, and obviously we needed the technology and computers to do so. So a little origin story here. All right, your first assignment. Using the shape tool or importing an image, you're going to make a 15-second animation. Things to animate: position, rotation, scale, and transparency. We're not going to worry about the anchor point here. You can move the anchor point, but I don't need you to animate it. Then we're going to render out our animation. So the thing that's a little bit difficult with After Effects, anything that you import into After Effects, it does not keep it in the file. Okay, so what do I mean by this? I'm just going to show you a quick example. I'll go through the steps later. But if I import an image of Norman, my dog, okay, great. I have this image of my dog. Let's say I did all of this animation. I'm going to save my project, so save as. We'll call this one Norm example. Okay, great. Now I'm going to send this to my teacher to look at, or I'm going to send this to my coworker, or, whoever. Well, the coworker, whoever you're sending it to, doesn't have your Norman file. They have your Norm example, your After Effects file. AEP is After Effects Project. I'm just going to delete my Norman file off the desktop for a second. But if I go to open my Norm example, I'm going to be missing everything. This is something that even on your own computer can be frustrating, because if I move a file, so if I had it on the desktop and then I make a Norm folder, it's been moved, After Effects doesn't know where to find it. After Effects is only referencing your files. So I'll hit OK, and you'll see all of my animation and stuff would still be there, but it's missing the image. So moving forward in class, everything that we do, you're going to have to render so that we can submit on Canvas, submit in the discussion board so everybody can see. Now, let's say I did this, and I'm just going to create a new folder. We'll call it Norm just for the example, and I'm going to move my picture into the Norm folder. So you can, if you're going to submit an After Effects file, you can also include a folder of all the images that you've used. Now this can be very difficult when you have a file that has, 25 images, but we can always right mouse click on the missing image and replace footage. Click File, and then you can navigate to find it. So Norm, here's my picture, open, there it is again, and anything that I had animated with it would be there again. Okay? So if that doesn't make sense, let me know. Again, we're going to be submitting renders, and I will tell you how to do this. But know that if you create a folder, if you move anything on your desktop, if you're sending it to someone else to look at, you either need to render or you need to send the files along with it, and then they can be relinked. I'm going to just quit this real quick so we can look back at what we were doing. So this assignment will be due Sunday by 11:59 p.m. Again, I'm going to go over rendering. Reminders. So our animatable properties, you can twirl down the transform properties. I want you to get used to the hotkeys here. So anchor point is A, position P. The only one that's kind of weird is opacity. Opacity is how I remember that one. So opacity, hit T to do that. You can also hold shift to do multiple. So if I know that I'm going to work in position and scale, I can hit P, hold shift, and hit S, and they'll both be up there. Here's a little website that goes over rendering if my video doesn't make sense or you want to see it another way. And then you're at the end of the week. Alright, so let's look at After Effects. Remember, when you open it this way, this is what you're going to get. You can click on New Project or just close this window. Then I'm going to go to New Composition. You can also go to Composition at the top and then click New Composition. Does the same thing. I'll call this First Assignment. You can do 1280 by 720 for this. Keep the frame rate at 24. Now I had said a 15-second animation. Let me make sure that's actually what I said. Yep. Sometimes I just don't remember what I typed. Okay, 15 seconds, background color gray, that's fine. So now we have this set up. Okay, so now you can go to File, Import, File to grab an image. You can right mouse click over here and go to Import File. Again, it's the exact same thing. Or if you would prefer, you can create a shape with the rectangle tool, hotkey Q. Okay. Hotkey V is your selection tool. So you know what, I'm going to bring back in Norm. So import file, Norman. Okay, so to get it actually onto our canvas here, you're going to click Norman and drag it down here. We've got our project window. This is going to show everything that's in any of your scenes, any of your compositions, and this will be, I'm in my first assignment composition, and these are kind of the layers that I'm working with. I'm going to hit hotkey V and click. Now we can see Norman's nose, but I can't see to scale it or do anything. Command and the minus sign to zoom out, plus sign to zoom in, control if you're on a PC. Now, here's the only tricky thing that makes After Effects different from other Adobe products. I cannot hold Shift first and then click and drag. I don't know why they did it this way, but you need to click a corner, start to drag, then hold Shift, and it will keep the proportions. You can also use your middle mouse to scroll, zoom in. So again, click and drag, then hold Shift to keep the proportions. Okay, so with our selection tool hotkey V selected, I can move this anywhere I want on my canvas. I can rotate it by pulling my mouse a little bit out. I'm sorry, After Effects difference again. We have our rotate tool here, so that's hotkey W. Then you'll see your mouse turns into a rotate and you can click on that corner. So hotkeys are going to become very important. You can hold Shift 2 to rotate more exactly. So V, is your selection tool. W is your rotate tool. Okay? Then when we get down here, remember we can twirl down, transform. These are our 5 animatable properties. Now, you'll notice that this is going to become very bogged down quickly. So let me do, I'll create a shape here and another shape over here. You can see already, and I don't even have everything twirled down, that my bottom window here has a lot of different layers because each one has animatable properties. Each one has a lot more than just those 5 animatable properties if you're twirling different information with it. So it becomes very busy. So a lot of times we only want to leave up what we're working with. So for instance, if I click on my Norman layer, if I hit P, only position is showing. S, T, A, don't remember which one I skipped. Maybe rotation, R. That's also why your rotate tool is W, because rotation in your animatable properties is hotkey R. So, I'm going to delete these shapes. And you can always just put your mouse in between some of these windows to click and drag depending upon size. Let's say now I want to make my animation. I know I want to deal with position, I can hold shift, I want scale, and transparency. That's what I'm going to work on with Norman. So what I can do is I can set this up to be however I want to start it. So maybe I want Norman over here, nice and tiny. Put it in the corner. Getting a little bit of lag there. Okay, so this is how I want it to start, except I want it to be at 0% opacity. So I'm going to do this. Turn it all the way down. Great. This is how I want to start. I need to turn the stopwatches on. By doing that, remember I made some keyframes. So now I want this at 15 seconds. So I'll move my time slider first, then I'll move my object, and that will set my key. So it's always time slider, object, key. Time slider, object, key. So now I'm going to turn this up to 100 so we can see it. I know I want to increase the scale. Do we want to zoom that far in on his nose? I don't know. We can really see the grain on that one. And then I'm going to move this over here. Let's not cut off his ear too much. All right. So remember, we need 2 keyframes to create an animation. So I'm going to go back to the beginning. I can hit spacebar to preview. Now, this is fine and dandy, but I really want him to be 100% transparency earlier so that we can see all that's happening. Right now, everything's kind of going at the same rate. We're just kind of zooming in and whatever. So I have a couple options. One, I know this key is the 100% opacity. You can see where my time slider is right here. I'm at a 92% opacity. I have a couple options. I can click on this keyframe and move it. So now at 4 seconds, it will be 100% opacity. So now we have 100% and then it zooms in further. My other option would be to go to exactly where I wanted it. So if it was the 4-second mark, and you can always look right over here to see 4 seconds, to be more exact than just with your time slider. And I can move this to 100 there. So now I have this keyframe that's 100 and this one, but that's okay because to have 2 keyframes with the same exact properties or numbers, nothing changes between the 2. It will just hold steady between those. Now let's say I'm going to add at 6. I want this to be scaled up even more, and then it'll come back. So we have zoom in on the grain, the nose, and then it bounces back. Well, you know what? I don't really love that. So, oops. Let me bring up my properties again. I accidentally hit a hotkey to turn off my animation. Notice, or not rotation. We want position, scale. There we go. You can also hit, so I hit Shift R. You can bring it back and remove it. But to my point, let me bring this back. If you don't like something that you've done, we can always click and drag around that keyframe and hit delete, and it'll be gone. Or you can override it. So I know that I'm on my key. Sometimes you need to zoom in. So this top slider here, if we click one of the ends and drag it in, and we can see this little blue line here is where our time slider actually is. You can zoom in so we know that we're exactly in line with this. But if I change the scale at that point, let's not get crazy. My keyframe is overridden. So whatever was there before is now changed to this one, so you don't have to worry about it. Let's say I accidentally turn off my stopwatch. It will not have that animation anymore, and when I turn it back on, it will be gone. So you want to be careful and make sure that you're not turning that off. I think it's pretty rare to turn it off, but just know that once you turn it off, you will lose all of your information. You can always just undo or go back to your last save. When working in After Effects, like with most things, but I recommend that you increment your saves. So File, Save As. If this is still my norm project, what did I call it last time? Norm example. This one would be norm example 1. That way, if I need to go back, I can go back to a previous version and maybe only lose however much time between them. I don't have to start from scratch. So, you know, if I accidentally turn off a stopwatch and I don't know when I did it and, you know, I need to go back to a version, I can go back to my last save instead of back to the very beginning. This is also helpful if you have any glitches or anything that just happens that's weird in your file, because then again, you go back a save, not back to the beginning. Okay? So I really want you to explore using these animatable properties. Try doing over-the-top things, try doing subtle things, try doing something that would work for a presentation, something that adds humor. You only need to turn in, you know, I mean, you can turn in whatever you want. I only need one video, but I want you to get really comfortable, you know, using the selection tool, the rotate tool. Let's not forget the pan behind tool. So let's I'm going to zoom out, just scale this down real quick. If you want to move your canvas, you can hold spacebar and you get kind of your hand hotkey here. That's this tool, your hand tool. I just hold spacebar to do it. It's much easier than going back and forth. And once you let go of spacebar, it goes to whatever you had selected. Clicking and letting go of spacebar obviously plays and pauses your video. But pan behind tool, let's not forget, if you want to move your anchor point, we have our pan behind tool, which is hotkey Y. And again, what this does, I'm just going to bring down another copy of Norman, keep things a little bit easier for us. Layer order, just like all other Adobe products, whatever is on top is what we're seeing most. We've got our little eyeball here to turn off and on the visibility of our layer. So let's say, again, if Norman were a blade of grass, oops, I let go of Shift too quickly. I'm going to hide this other one. Right now, if I grab my rotate tool, hotkey W, I'm rotating from the center, okay? Because our pivot point, by default, is located at the center. And this is our pivot point, this little circle icon with our 4 directions here. If I use my pan behind tool and I drag this to the bottom, now when I rotate, we're rotating from that bottom plane. But again, we want to get our anchor points kind of set before we get going with our animations. You can always, and I know I'm going over a lot here, this is a lot of just tool-based and introductory stuff. It'll become, we have a lot of different tools to go over, but they're going to build and we're going to have more creative liberties and all of that, but one step at a time. So once you get, and you can import as many images or shapes as you want, once you get it all nice and moving how you want it, I would suggest that you do more than 2 keyframes per image, just to kind of show me that you've explored and understand these tools. We have to render, because remember I said I can't look at your file unless you attach everything that you've been working with. So, to render. Rendering is basically taking everything that you've done here, and it's going to look frame by frame and take that image and make it kind of into a still. So, frame 1, there's nothing. Frame 2, frame 3, well, let me give it a second, there we go. So this is, if you look down here, frame 12. We've got this at 12%, so it's remembering every single frame and then compiling them into a video file. So you can send this video file to friends, family, anybody can watch it. So we're going to go to Composition, Add to Media Encoder Queue. Okay. After Effects has its own render queue, which is the option right underneath, but it doesn't give you the variety of options as to how to render your file. So Adobe Creative Cloud has the media encoder, so we're going to use that here. If you haven't downloaded it yet, make sure to download the Adobe Media Encoder. It's its own program in Creative Cloud. Now when you say add to media encoder queue, it'll take a second. It has to open the media encoder. I don't know that I actually clicked it though. Let's do that. There we go. It's going to open media encoder. This might take a few seconds again, so being patient. And it's going to place your After Effects file into the queue or the line to be rendered. And again, going through that process, remembering frame by frame. So this is media encoder. You can see right here, comp 1, that's what I was working on. We want it in an H.264. So you can click this little, and you can see that I also got a little overzealous. I'm just hitting delete because I clicked it so many times. My computer is slightly frozen, but this will make more sense now. First assignment, it's going to match whatever you saved your file name as. H.264 is the file that we want, so you can hit the little arrow next to it. I'm going to pause my recording 1 second. Alright, so H.264, you'll just hit this little arrow here and go to H.264. We're going to just go match source high bitrate. That's why it was important that we set up our composition, because it's taking all of the information from After Effects and matching those for this video. And then you're going to click on these blue words here to be able to select where you want to put your file. So do you want to keep it in the folder that we were working with? Do you want to put it on your desktop? I'm just going to put it on the desktop for right now. Call it norm example. And then you're just going to hit this play button. If we look at the bottom, you'll see that it's thinking, it's going to start rendering, and then you can actually see how the preview's going. Since I have a pretty simple animation, it will go fairly quickly, but you can see how long it's taking to render, what part it's rendering. Actually pretty cool. Bloop! All done. We can close Media Encoder. And now I have my actual video. Okay? So again, this is a file that anyone can open. You can submit on Canvas. It's all set. So this is what I'm looking for. If you want to attach your After Effects file, you can. If you want to create a folder with everything that you've put into your After Effects file, you can. So if you ever have questions on something or aren't sure how it's working, there are ways that we can compare and look. It's just a little bit more complicated in an online space, but completely doable. Okay? So get used to hotkeys, some of these main tools that we talked about, animatable properties, how motion graphics began, and I look forward to seeing your first animations. Let me know if you need anything.